Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for tuning into Zoom and Facebook Live to Fotografiska New York's first virtual live event, Picturing the Fight, Part 2, that are part of our ROAR exhibit, Fotografiska New York. My name is Wendy Wyman. I'm the Director of Programming. Again, welcome. In the last few years, the United States has seen a wave of activism across the nation that inspired unprecedented protest and civic engagement. People have come together in record-breaking numbers, outspoken and persistent in response to this wave. Fotografiska New York presents ROAR, an installation focused on the power of photography to uplift voices. Photographers Kisha Bari, Tish Lampert, and Ginny Suss take us on the front lines in ROAR, providing us all an up-close look. This is the second conversation with photographers Kisha Bari and Ginny Suss in support of ROAR, the installation that's currently on view in the museum in New York. We are excited to share that we will be reopening our doors on July 29th, part of New York City's Phase 4, and we can't wait for you to visit us in person. Please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A section, and thank you to those who sent us questions after watching part 1 of this conversation last week. On Zoom, you'll notice at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A button. Please feel free to click on the button and type in your questions. I'll do my best to get through all of your questions. Additionally, Fotografiska's Director of Community, Alejandra Bloom, is moderating on Facebook Live, and she will keep an eye out for your questions there and forward them along to us. You'll also notice that we have a poll at the bottom of the page. We're interested to learn if you have visited Fotografiska New York since our opening in December, so please feel free to complete that if you can. And now for introductions. Ginny Suss is a documentary photographer, producer, and founder of Ginny Suss Productions. Ginny's impressive achievements include founding of the Women's March and co-founder of the Resistance Revival Chorus, a women-forward chorus that celebrates the marriage of music and activism. Kisha Bari. Kisha is a New York-based photographer. You may have seen her work in the New York Times or Rolling Stone. She's a passionate photographer and activist whose work also includes multiple solo exhibitions focused on Hurricane Sandy's devastation in the New York Rockaways, behind the scenes at the Women's March in 2017, and her current collab, I Am Child, with artist and activist Paola Mendoza at the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee. And now, without further ado, I welcome both Ginny and Kisha. Thank you so much for being here. Lovely to see you again.
Hi, thank you.
Thank
Wendy.
you. Thanks.
Good to see you.
So good to see you.
So I have questions, again, that were submitted already, and I think we'll use that as a guide. To those watching, we really want to hear from you. This should feel like a conversation. This is a unique opportunity, one that if the museum was open would be taking place on the stage live with the exhibition surrounding us. So this is for you. The first question is from the Fotografiska curatorial team and from members of our staff. From the photos and stories that you shared during Picturing the Fight, Part 1, the last video, are there any updates on how your photography impacted any of the individuals or groups captured in those photos? And how has COVID impacted your work?
Do you want to just chat a little bit about Rosa for a second? And then
Sure, yeah. I think that particularly Rosa was a woman that I met on the Caravana Migrante in Mexico, and we were in Cruz on the route towards the border, and she was traveling on her own from Honduras with, well, not on her own. She had 4 children, but she didn't have any help. And she was escaping violence and somebody who had threatened to kill her and her 4 children. So I traveled with her for a lot of the way, and intermittently all the way to the border of the United States. She reached the border of California and Mexico. And she, at that point, I didn't know whether she'd actually make it into the United States or not. And thankfully, she is now in the middle of asylum proceedings and currently in New Orleans with her 4 children, and she's safe and everyone's healthy. And it is really wonderful to get updates on her, particularly because there are so many other migrants along the caravana that I didn't know where they would end up, and if they have even made it into the United States, or if they're still safe.
And what
Kisha's work, I just want to, like, Kisha's work at the border was such an inspiration to me. I mean, she threw herself into, you know, a completely unknown situation, and the way that she's been able to document Rosa's journey with Paola Mendoza is it's really inspiring. And just knowing that Rosa's here now and we continue to fundraise, like I've been to a couple fundraisers for her. Kisha and Paola continue to, you know, create platforms and fundraise to help support her on her journey. You know, a new undocumented citizen to this country, a new undocumented person to this country with 4 children who has legal fees that even at the hugest discount are, you know, almost in the 5 figures. So it's been a real journey, but I feel like that's a really incredible way that Kisha's work has been directly transformative. And even with the work that I do, managing the Resistance Revival Chorus, which is what you mentioned earlier, it's a big project. We're over 70 women, and we come together to sing in the spirit of the idea that joy is an act of resistance. But we cover a song that's really, to us, a sacred song called Ella's Song that was written by Dr. Bernice Regan. And she is an incredible activist who came up in SNCC and the Civil Rights era, and wrote this song as a tribute to the words of Ella Baker, including Ella Baker's words in the song. And so that's a song that we covered on our record. We included arrangements by Toshi Regan, who is Dr. Bernice Regan, the composer of the song's daughter. Yeah. And this song was originally recorded by Sweet Honey in the Rock. Well, recently we released it as the first single off our album, with 100% of the proceeds for any song bought going to the Movement for Black Lives. And Kisha and I collaborated, and we used a photo of Kisha's as our album art. So this is now like a direct way that her art is working with this chorus that she's also in, and is driving dollars directly to the Movement for Black Lives. So I love that trail.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about that much further than the photograph, to be quite honest. But yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, you create the work, and I think that, like, as long as if the issue's out there and the imagery gets shared and put out there, then it directly does change people's lives. It educates and uplifts issues that may not have been, you know, at the forefront. And I think it's really important to continue doing so, not just me or Ginny, or, I mean, anybody who is has access to document and bear witness. It's really important to have that documentation, for sure.
That's a nice lead-in, actually. The next set of questions, sort of a 4-part question from Cade Kelly. In what ways was the photo selection process for Roar purposeful? Is there anything that was left out that you wish you could have added? But in response to what you just said, Kisha, also, in what ways did the current social, political, economic climates influence the photo selection process? So thinking about when we installed this the first week in March and where we are now, maybe we can touch upon that.
Yeah, I mean, it was pre-COVID, so a lot has changed since then, for sure. Like, we've had so many things happen, from our isolation to, you know, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's death, and um, you know, the focus has shifted so much since we curated all of the images for Raw. I think that we had a focus on what was politically and socially, you know, really at the forefront when we chose the photographs, didn't we, Jenny? I think, like, I think we did the, like, your photos of Las Desis, like the Las Desis action was this, it had just become a worldwide phenomenon, like this Las Desis the Chilean women who really, you know, brought to the forefront, their chant of how the governments are raping us, you know, as women, and that was like one of the main drivers for that photograph to be like included, I believe, right? And then what else is in there? Yeah, so I think that, you know, we definitely chose a wide range of images because there's so much there is so much there are so many, like, stories and issues that need to be uplifted and talked about.
Yeah, I mean, in looking back, a lot of this was with the premise of heading into an election. So I think that was a big part of the decision process as well.
I think that
on the topic of, you know, COVID, how has that changed your work now? Yeah.
Well, first of all, COVID's changed not just our work, but this exhibit, right? Like I saw this exhibit in person on the opening day, which I think was March 12th. And then on March 13th.
I still haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I still haven't been able to see it.
So the show's up for one day. And this is like the first photo show that I've really had. So I was like, oh, it was up for, at least I got one day.
Which is why we made the decision that it will stay up and it'll be part of our reopening. It's important to us.
But I think if you want to speak about how COVID has directly impacted my photography, it's been wild, and it's completely, you know, disrupted and upended what I've been able to do and how I think about it. You know, I think in general, my work is always kind of serving these dual purposes, one of which is just documenting my life and the things around me that I care about. You know, I think I always think about storytelling. I think about, like, early humans around the campfire, and just how deeply embedded storytelling is in our DNA, in our cultures, and in our sort of overall understanding of the world and the synthesis of ideas. And in many ways, my photos are sort of an extension of the story of my life. And all places.
Let's actually stop there and let's look at some of the photos. I know that you have access to yours.
I have a few.
You may not today.
Paula, 3 minutes. Maybe.
Paula Levine had submitted a question on this topic, and she just asked now live if she could see some of the photos. She asked the question about how do your photos of protest promote and help explain the issues of politics and healthcare. So we're in a healthcare crisis. It seems like an appropriate time to maybe look at some photos or, you know, answer that very pointed question.
Sure. Should I share photos?
Sure.
Now, is that what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Share your photos. Share your photos with us. I have 2 minutes remaining before my computer decides to, like, allow me into my photographs. So bear with me.
Okay, so this photo is not a protest photo, but this photo that just happened to sort of pop up in this folder is one of the ways in which COVID has impacted my photography, which is in isolation. Like, my photos are about people and events and protests and live music, right? The music world is also something that I've been photographing music for 15 years. So that's like, and portraiture within the music space is very important to me. I was on a Zoom conference with Marshall Allen, who is the band leader for the band Sun Ra. He's 95. And I decided to experiment and try shooting the screen at Kisha, which was born out of a conversation Kisha and I had. And so this is
So
him,
awesome.
his 95th birthday, and he's a hero of mine. If you don't listen to the Sun Ra Orchestra, you need to get hip to it and check out some spiritual jazz. But he's, you know, he plays 6 or 7 different instruments, and he's the band leader, and he's 95 and he's still touring, going around the world. So this was one way that I attempted. I think it was kind of a failure. Like, this isn't a great photograph. You know, I was trying to photograph.
This is so awesome. Yeah. This is such an awesome photograph. I love it. His smile is
but it caught
beautiful.
it caught the, you know, I try to always catch something really human and authentic, and I think I caught a little moment here. But it's not my photography in and of itself. This is much more, you know, so this was the first protest, the first Black Lives Matter protest I went to this time around in the last 2 months with 2 of my friends. They are partners, and you know, they're reviving here some of the iconic early ACT UP AIDS iconography and imagery, but sort of reimagining it for the movement for Black Lives, which I thought was really amazing. And just looking like that wasn't staged. That's what we were wearing for real, you know, like you know, I think if you had come to me in December and said, oh yeah, this is what you'll look like at a protest in 4 months, I would have been like, get out of here, you're crazy, wearing goggles and masks. But that's the reality of it, you know. This is another
so dystopian,
totally dystopian and bizarre. This is just another from that same day, and another photo, which I just really liked that the sort of inversion of the Black Lives Matter flag in this one with this group of friends, especially because, you know, this is a multiracial group of friends together, but you see the idea that there's like some sort of, I don't know, some sort of parallel or metaphor with the flag being backwards, and like how backwards we have been as a culture and a society for so long when it comes to issues of race, just kind of struck me. And then this is the last one of kind of a new photos I took that day. That's just sort of was the stark contrast between the National Guard and the protesters, and just ideas about like space and respect and the militarization of the police, when, you know, are all kind of at play here. You see that the protesters are the ones respecting public health and wearing the masks, right? And these are just citizens, and the people who are sent as agents of the government are not. But then you also look at them, and they look like they're 19 years old, you know, and got roped into something that was bigger than them. And I don't even know at 19 or 20 how much they understand. So there's a kind of a conversation in that photo going on. Kisha, I don't know if you have any photos that you'd like to share. You're on mute.
Ginny, I want to follow up with, I want to ask you, this is also from the Fotografiska team, photographing protests and being in and of marches. What criticisms do you face as activists / photographers covering controversial topics, or what could be perceived as controversial topics?
A lot of things. I was kind of speaking earlier about how my work has these dual purposes of like documenting my life and uplifting social justice issues, right? And issues that matter to me. And it's like, I think my biggest hope is through my work that people can sort of understand that that these issues, like all essentially boil down to human rights issues of dignity. And, you know, if you think that this isn't your cause, and I put that in quotes, you're wrong. You're probably mistaken, and take a deeper look. And it's pretty clear to see how these causes are all connected and overlap. And, you know, I think the message of we all need to be showing up for all of these causes. It's not just about what I think is my, you know, my cause. if I don't show up, you know, I'm a woman, so I'm fighting for women's rights. But if I don't show up for, you know, the queer community and the undocumented community and climate justice, then it just doesn't make sense, because we need to work on all these things together to create change. Some of the criticisms I've faced, obviously, has been right-wing trolling. That's been an issue. I'm sure Kish has faced that too. Just, you know, all our work has a very, very specific political slant and perspective. We're very progressive minded, and the right wing has definitely popped up in my social media at times, and I've gotten trolled a little bit. It's nothing bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad considering I have friends that have, you know, had death threats and, you know, all sorts of really, really awful challenges with the right, you know, alternative right, and they're very intense. I think the main criticism I have had has actually been within the photographic industry, which is the most it led to a couple of years of me wondering and trying to figure out whether I was on the right track and what I needed to, where I wanted to take my career, because there's a lot of photographers and editors who would tell me that I'm not a photojournalist, or they would say that my work is too biased. You know, I have to shoot in a non-partisan way to get published in the New York Times or in the Washington Post. You know, we love your work, Kisha, but you know, we can't publish you because we can't be seen as supporting your work. So that has been a really interesting battle in my sort of within me for a while. But this was I've definitely found my peace. I decided a long time ago that I would follow my heart, because I feel like justice for humanity is far more important than me getting published in the New York Times. I just don't care. So it's yeah, you have to make a choice whether you want to be respected within your industry. Yeah, whether you want to be respected with your industry, or whether you want to do good with your artwork. And I chose the latter because I don't think I could live with myself. And I've actually sat next to photographers in the middle of the cabinet hearings and asked, you know, they've asked me, they're like, oh, who are you shooting for? And I'm like, oh, shooting for the Women's March. And they're like, oh, that must be nice, because they have had assignments to shoot the cabinet hearings from a certain viewpoint, from a very, very conservative viewpoint, where they can't show bias even though they feel a certain way. So it's much more liberating as well to like be able to have made the decision. But it took me a long time to come to that decision too, because, you know, I did have a lot of pressure from my peers and wanting to feel accepted in the industry. And yeah, it doesn't matter. You do what you I mean,
I think there's a good argument for those photographers also, that like there's no real unbiased work. You're bringing your perspective as a human being to everything you photograph. And so the idea that like there's some sort of artificial like guise of being unbiased, to me it never really flies. And you and I and you know, could look at any photograph in the New York Times and like come to our own conclusion about a perspective or a viewpoint. So that argument has always like confused me. Like I don't really understand it fully. But Kish and I think both have like been lucky to approach not just social justice work, but other things too, like music too, from an insider perspective. And you know, we're often with the organization throwing the, you know, doing the protest or the rally. We're not coming in as outsider press.
Yeah, I would encourage people watching this to go back to part 1, where you really elaborate about that and how much it really is about trust and the difference from being the insider to the hired gun, and the difference there and how important that is. And another question that came in, and I think you kind of answered it, but what changes in activism and protest photography do you hope will come out of this difficult time right now? Is there, you know, something specific that you're like, wow, now is now, and this is an incredible time? Are you feeling, you know, that it's...
I mean, I hope.
I would have. So go, Ginny.
No, I mean, I hope that like I hope that people come out of this innovating and being creative. Like, Kisha, can you talk a little bit about the way you've been taking photos since this started? Because I think that you just took like a whole style of photography and brought it into your home, and I thought that was so amazing. Like the portraits you were taking.
Oh, the
so
journal.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just had a baby. No, I actually didn't just have a baby. I had a baby almost a year ago now, so he's not just a baby anymore. But you know, I took 6 months of, you know, sort of semi-maternity with him, and we flew back from Australia in the middle of this pandemic, and that my work just completely dried up, as did everybody's. You know, we all just, you know, had everything stop. And so I'm part of a collective called Women Photograph, which is hundreds of women and non-binary photographers from all around the world, a part of a collective. And some of the members started a Instagram called The Journal. So I think it's the Journal _collective on Instagram. And it's 400 women and non-binary photographers who have started to document their personal perspective on this pandemic, because it's a worldwide issue, right? Mm-hmm. So so I started documenting my home life, which I've never really done. I've never turned the camera on myself because I don't really like the camera on myself. Like most photographers, but it's been really beautiful, and I think I've spent more time, and it's been a really special like interaction. We actually just did a takeover, so you can actually see some of the photographs on the Journal _collective Instagram, or I think you can just put in WP the Journal. And the last 2 days, me and my group, we all got put into groups of 5 or 6 photographers, and we did a takeover, and it's just really beautiful to see how everybody's sort of interacting and handling. And also because, you know, the US is, you know, in an awful situation with COVID right now. We're not handling it very well, but there's other photographers in other countries that are actually doing quite well, and so their photography sort of reflects that a little bit more. It's a little bit more relaxed and less confined. So but it's also about feelings. You know, we have some time now to really reflect on our work, not as documenting or factual. It's more about emotions and feelings, and how we're navigating our mental health at this time, being like, you know, isolated. So yeah, it's been a really, I wish I could show you some photos, but unfortunately I have technical issues today.
We can show them after, maybe in social media. We'll point to this moment.
And follow at Kisha Bari on Instagram too, her own Instagram, so you can see some of her work. But I just thought that was, you know, sometimes when you're in crazy situations that feel like they're really confining, like the isolation at first felt really restrictive, but watching the creativity that has come out of that in different ways, like from my kind of lame attempt at taking a picture of a FaceTime, but to Kisha's like really, truly beautiful portraits of her family at home, which is something, you know, that she might not have even been interested or thought to really photograph before in that way, you know, in that same way.
I was too busy.
Yeah.
I was too busy. It was crazy. But you know,
yeah, I was just going to say, you just answered the questions that came in from Beth Mendez, which was, are there any photos that you have taken during COVID that may inspire people generally, but also to vote in November? We're not going to answer that fully. Obviously, Ginny, you've already pointed to that, but I think it's nice to know that you're still working on projects within your own universe. It looks like, Kisha, maybe you're outside of New York right now, or maybe...
Yeah, I'm in Albany.
You're in New York.
I'm in Albany right now, but I have attended a few Black Lives Matter events and rallies here, and photographed them, and tried to work with the organizers as much as possible to make sure that I honor their organizing and that it's okay with them. And I think that that's really important too, to make sure that you're not just shoving a camera in people's faces without getting permission.
Yeah, try to be really like I try to be hyper aware of not only if I'm there, even if I'm a guest of the organization, I'm still a guest, and it's a position of privilege to be there and to be shooting always. And so I always try to keep, even if it's just one-on-one, taking a portrait of someone, it's a privilege, it's an honor that, you know, you're getting to have that exchange. And especially at protests that are about social justice issues, I'm also like very much always trying to think about my positionality and my white privilege in that space, and like not taking up too much space, which is always like a navigation, because you need to be somewhat aggressive. I hate using that word, but somewhat aggressive to be able to get to capture the shots you want sometimes.
To get that shot.
Yeah, but you also have to like be able to pull back and really honor like the space of the protest and the people who are doing that work. And that whole insider outsider thing can also cause tension, because I'm constantly trying to like do everything at once, which is a problem in my life that I need to stop doing. But you know, I'll show up to the protest thinking I'm gonna march, but like I'll happen to have my camera, and then I'll march for a little, and then I'll start taking pictures, and I'll get really just like my photo eyes on, and suddenly I'm in full on photography mode, and I have to adjust my relationship to the march itself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is separation sometimes, that you know, when you look through your viewfinder, you know, it is a very narrow view, and sometimes you forget about your surroundings because you're always looking to frame an image. So you have to like really pull back every now and then and be in the moment and sort of appreciate where in the space that you're in, and also just realize that, you know, people are protesting because there's real hurt there. There's real hurt and damage, and that's the reason why we're out there protesting, you know. So shoving a camera in someone's face that has been through some serious trauma is really not cool without their permission.
Totally.
So yeah, so it's a balance. You have to find the balance of being able to capture emotive imagery that really allows the energy of the situation to be uplifted, so that other people can sit up and take notice, and also respecting the people that are there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A lighter question, maybe, also from Paula Levine. Who are your heroes, generally and photographically? Maybe not a lighter question.
It's hard. I mean, I feel like any badass woman that you know speaks truth to power is like my hero. Like, you know, or you know, there are like from Linda Sarsour to Maya Angelou to Tina Turner, like to, you know, like there's so many really amazing women that I think are inspiring and have inspired me to do the work for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's all the civil rights photographers that I've always admired since I was a teenager, like Gordon Parks and James Corrales, and not civil rights, but Carrie Mae Weems is one of my all-time, and Barbara Kruger as well, all-time favorite artists that, you know, have also inspired me along the way. Ginny?
Whenever I get asked this, I always like, I just think about the people who have inspired me the deepest in my life, whether it's like the kind of person they are that I admire, or their creative imagination. And so of course, like my family first, my mother, my father, my sister, who's an amazing painter, my, you know, father who brought music into my life in a very deep way from when I was young, and my mother who brought visual art into my life when I was very young, who just, that combination sort of, you know, informed who I am today. I think about the professors I've had who have changed how I think about the world, and my grandparents who are activists themselves. The Spanish Civil War was their big cause, and they were
I didn't know that. That's
very
cool.
much sort of Jewish pinkos back in the day. But like, you know, there are artists who I look up to and I consider heroes, similar to Kisha, like just badasses who bring something deep and powerful to the picture. But it's so eclectic, the range of people who inspire me, you know, Stevie Wonder to like Gloria Steinem to Octavia Butler to Marsha P. Johnson. And like, I don't know, I wouldn't even know where to begin to like name a hero. And photographically, honestly, it's my friend's work that has actually inspired me the most. Like Questlove's photographs, Questlove from The Roots, who I've worked for 15 years. He's the first person who stuck a digital camera in my hand in the early days of digital cameras in like 2003 and told me to use his camera and shoot the band when they were on stage. And that's how I got hooked.
Thank you, Questlove.
Yeah.
Thank you, Quest.
And but like there are photographers that like I want to uplift now who you might not have heard of who are amazing. Vicky Ford, Mel D. Cole, Craig Weatherby, D Nice, who you might know from his DJ gigs, but he's an incredible photographer. And these people have been documenting a similar type of music scene that I've been documenting, like in the hip hop world primarily. You know, for the last 10 years, we've all been shooting together and crisscrossing each other. And I look at their work and I look at, you know, their techniques, and it really inspires me. And then bigger names, a lot of the people Kisha mentioned, there's, you know, some other sort of larger named music and hip hop photographers, Jamel Shabazz to Ricky Powell, and then just some like art photographers I like, Wolfgang Tillmans, again, the civil rights photographers like Gordon Parks really inspire me. So I've got a wide range.
Great. We have another question from Liz. I know that many photos of dramatic incidences are shot in black and white. Obviously, she looked at the gallery that's on the website. I encourage everybody on this call to look at the gallery that's there in digitally even before we open. Do you also take shots in color?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a preference for you, or is it?
No, there's no preference. It really depends on the mood of the imagery, the mood of the day, as to whether or not they're. I visualize it in black and white or in color. I don't. Yeah, I don't think that they're. I think color can really lend to a situation. If it's yeah, and also when the colors work together really well, I think that you know, it really makes a photograph. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
both.
I love both. Here, I'm gonna share. Kisha, you still can't share photos, is that right?
I've just been able to airdrop a folder of images from one computer to another. So let's see how I go.
Hi.
Ginny, if you want to share those photos now, and let me just
I'll share first, and then
you share first.
Sorry, and then Kisha can go next. But sorry, I can't quite figure out how to scroll through these without just scrolling through and showing you. But okay, so this is a photo I took recently at a protest that's in color, and a lot of my protest photography is black and white, but there's a good number that's in color. And this really was about motion and movement here. And just like the sheer mass, the numbers, I was just trying to capture something about the essence of the day. And
where were
you? What?
Where were you?
Philadelphia. This is in Philadelphia, which is where I have been. I'm a New Yorker, I'm a Brooklyn person. I've been in Philadelphia to be closer to my family during COVID. So this was in Philadelphia, which is where I grew up, where the city really just made me proud that day. Everyone turned up. It was really incredible. But that picture in color, I just want trying to get through to another one real quick sorry about this, that I want to show you. And I don't know how to, when I'm full screen, I don't know how to scroll properly. Okay, this is one for
Please excuse us in our technical.
I feel 100 years old when I just did that. But, so this is the Las Teses protest that Kisha mentioned at the very beginning of our chat. And we did a coordinated performance piece where we chanted, we sung, and the piece was called The Rapist Is You. And it was super powerful. It was about rape culture around the world. And it, you can see all the sort of different kinds of faces of feminism today in this photo, but we had a very intentional black and red color scheme going. And I think having the color popping in this one, especially with the red accents, really worked for the photograph. So I just think it depends.
Yeah, it would have been lost in black and white.
Totally lost. And I think it's much more, I don't know, I just think it depends on the lending the exact photo. Let me see if I can make this. Oh, here we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this photo is, I think, a really great example of something that I took at a protest. And some of the other photos from that same day, I preferred black and white. But this photo with that like crispy blue sky and Bambi, who's a trans Latina activist who's incredible. I just thought I caught a beautiful portrait of her in a very contemplative moment. And part of it was the like serenity of the lighting on her and the bright blue day that like I needed, you know, it just wouldn't have translated in the same way, black and white. So I definitely, color's always been a big inspiration to me, but I think there are times when the photo just naturally lends itself to black and white, to something that's less saturated and maybe more severe in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let me stop sharing and see if Kisha can share a few of hers.
Yeah, I've got it. I'm finally, so speaking of elastosis, I wanted to, I found a photo of Ginny that I had taken at the elastosis action in action today while I was sifting, and yeah, I just love it. I think that, you know, this really is it's color, but it's also got a lot of life in it. And I think that this is a black and white image. We were in the subway, New York City subway. It just would have been lost as a black and white image. So I have to exit to get out. But
great.
It's part of Fotografiska. But also this is an image of the young Muslim women at the Women's March in 2019. Yeah, 2019. And they all wore blue hijabs, and they were so powerful. They had a choreographed routine, and it was just such a beautiful display, and they had great energy. And so and the fact that they really put effort into like making sure that they had color in their outfits, like, and the same color was really important to make sure that we represented. So there's a lot. I actually shoot a lot in color. This is from the Caravana Migrante. This is some boys in the makeshift shelter on the border in Tijuana, just waiting it out until their number came up so that they could present their asylum case. And this is on the Caravana Migrante. And as much as it was just a very, very hard journey, difficult, like it broke my heart to walk alongside these people every day, where some might use black and white to make it more dramatic. I think that the color of it really represented the people a little bit better. So yeah, you choose black and white color depending on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
That caravan, I can never stop thinking about it. But I just feel like you did such beautiful work, sort of bringing a real humanity and a human face to what was going on. Because a lot of what was being talked about in the press was really just ignored that piece, And I feel like in general, that's where art like this can be really useful, because I think it can affect people's hearts and minds. Art can touch people in a way that, a policy paper can't, or a newspaper article usually doesn't, and can really help connect people to the humanity of the issues that we're talking about,
Yeah. We touched on this in part one, but, it really is something that the media really focused on just like these swarms of people just like breaking down barriers and coming to storm the United States. And Paola and I went down there and really just wanted to focus on the humans and the singular stories, and it really changed the narrative, I believe, because we were the first ones to do that. And then all of a sudden, you know, a lot of different other outlets started to do the same thing and finally see these people as humans. But there's not a day that goes by where I don't think of these people and where they are now.
Well, and then to that point, there's also this like become this beautiful through line of like not just a community of activists who have worked together that's formed, that I think me and Kisha are like representative of, like the idea of, you know, creating new community and new friendships here. But there's also people that you get in touch with, you get connected to people across the board and across the world, and it transcends the idea of borders, right? So even if you're not talking about immigration directly, the idea of like art transcending borders and connecting people, I think is really powerful. Las Teses, that group that I showed the photograph from, who did the anti-rape culture protest. I just want to mention this because within the next day or two, we're going to be posting a letter and a petition for them. They're getting totally harassed by the Chilean National Police Force, who are suing them for making art about rape culture, for making art that they feel hurts them because it talks about police violence, and trying to silence them, censorship, but also just trying to like dehumanize these women and what they're trying to talk about. And so they created a song with Nadia from Pussy Riot as part of a performance art piece, and this is what they're getting sued over. So we put together a petition for them, and we had a bunch of activists and artists come together and sign it, but we're gonna be going public, and hopefully if you follow me on my socials, you can see, when it goes up, you can see the link and sign the petition to help get the Chilean National Police Force to back off. But it's like the fact that they, you know, they came here, they came to Washington, D.C. for the Women's March this year and led us in the protest they created. And now they're in trouble and they're coming to us, and we're helping them by galvanizing American activists and artists to help them. So that exchange, I think, is really beautiful.
Amazing.
Solidarity. You know, international solidarity. It's awesome. So good.
Good. Great. Well, I don't want to keep you too long. Let me just check and see. I inserted some of the questions that we received, and I want to really just thank you both so much for your time. We can't wait to be together with you both in the museum. Thank you to our entire Fotografiska team, and we can't wait to continue the conversation. And hopefully the Resistance Revival Chorus will be able to perform this year. That was the plan, so no doubt. Yep. And everyone that's tuned in tonight, thank you so much. Continue to follow us, visit the website, become a member, and thank you both so much for all your work and for being part of this installation.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you to the whole Fotografiska team.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I really enjoyed it, and sorry about my technical issues, and I'm really excited to see the exhibition finally when it's open. It's been a long time. I've been waiting a long time for this.
I know, I can't wait too. And I think I said this to my mother the other day, that if, you know, I've been very cautious during COVID, but if I were to go somewhere, the idea of a museum or gallery that like has tall ceilings like Fotografiska and feels very well ventilated. I feel like most museums have to have good airflow just to protect the work. So, like Fotografiska feels like one of the few places that I would be really comfortable going inside. So, you know, you have a beautiful
and as a meeting space, it's important because we are an epicenter for community. And the whole intention of Fotografiska is to inspire more conscious mind through photography, but it's also to come together and discuss these really important issues and also escapism. We live in a really dense city, and we know, as a respite, what it means to go to the museum. So it's our every intention to open with all precaution and be super, super safe, but also have a cocktail in hand and just enjoy. So thank you both, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.